Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. I'm Susan Lynn. I'm a psychic and a medium. Thank you for joining me today. Today is the day that we're going to do part 1 of my spirit guides answer your political questions. So we're going to jump right in and we're going to go with our first question, which is from Star Sapphire. Thank you for your question. Star Sapphire says, I'm curious about whether the far right Scotus are being paid off, and if so, who's doing it? Yes, Star, it is my opinion, and this is for entertainment purposes only, but it is my opinion that there's dark money in the Scotus, and I think that's actually, fairly commonly thought of within certain circles. So I don't think I'm really predicting anything really far out here. But yes, dear, I think the question you might want to ask as well, and you're asking who's doing it. What I see is a consortium of American oligarchs or American, not only American, actually, I'll take that back. So they would be wealthy people that would have American interest. They may be from other countries, but they have American interests. Now, what is interesting is that I've never seen before is this group or consortium. And it's sort of like everybody puts money into this one account. Now, this account, I think, might be connected to Davos. I think it's Switzerland. But this account is then, it's sort of like they're washing money in the sense that the money that comes into the account could come from anywhere. I mean, it could come from China or Russia or America or any place. Then once it's written from that account to a donation to Scotus, it's cleansed. It's not connected to that person anymore. It's just from a quote unquote super PAC or some not-for-profit or whatever it is. But it's interesting to me, this is the first time I've seen this, that the money is coming from all sources and is being collected and then put into an account and then doled out. Now, also something that's interesting that I'm seeing is that potentially Democrats or whatever you want to call them, liberal judges have also gotten donations potentially from this group. And they're showing me that those donations would be, $5,000 or $10,000 or less. Now they're being shown a ledger, which is like an accounting, program. And the amounts that are donated to there was some kind of change. They're showing me a calendar now, and there was a change in the calendar. And when the calendar changed, the donations changed and the players changed. So the people that putting money into the account changed and the amount of the donations changed. So I'm seeing tens of thousands of dollars, more like 50,000, 75,000 donations to Scotus. And in these larger donations seem to be targeting the right-wing judges. Now, I would say to you, another question you might want to ask, Star, would be, will we ever clean up this mess? Will we ever get dark money out of our Supreme Court? And the answer is yes, but not entirely. I do believe that we will be able to get at least 80% of the dark money out and potentially 90% of the dark money out. I can't quite see us, sadly, ever being rid of the dark money completely. I think there's going to be about 10%. Now, interestingly enough, that money, that 10%, is connected to some of the justices that are on the court now and that will likely stay on the court. I would say that this money might be targeted. Okay, so let me make this clear. There's going to be some judges that are going to leave the court. I believe that Kavanaugh might be one of those judges. I believe that Clarence Thomas might be one of those judges. And I believe that Amy Coney Barrett might be one of the judges for different reasons. But the judges that stay, this is the interesting part to me, the judges that stay will continue getting donations from this consortium. And that one of those judges that I feel like may possibly be getting some money from those types of donations might be Roberts. So that was interesting. That was a lot of new information that I didn't know before. So thank you for your question, Star. Now, Sue B has a question, and her question is, the Supreme Court is scheduled to hear the case Moore v. Harper this fall. It has to do with giving state legislatures complete power over our elections, including unbridled gerrymandering and selection of electors for federal elections, among other things. How will this affect our already hanging by a thread democracy? So this is a big deal. The Supreme Court has agreed to hear this case, and this case is just Looney Tunes. It basically says what Sue B so eloquently stated, and that is that if the Supreme Court rules in favor of this case, your local states can override the rule of the people. Okay, now I know that sounds probably literally batshit crazy to you, because it is. So your question is, how will this affect our already hanging by a thread democracy? Okay. Well, here's the thing, Subi. Unfortunately, there's a really good chance that this is going to happen, which is scary. It's really and truly, I'm speechless, actually, to be honest, to explain how important this is. But I want to tell you this, because I think this is really good news, because when I heard about this, I freaked out. And I really spent a lot of time talking to my guides about it. And I'm going to tell you this. If it doesn't go through, it's going to be because we elected enough Democrats, which we are going to elect Democrats to the House and the Senate, but we elected enough Democrats to pass some laws that and potentially even, right, we would have to pass the laws. We'd have to pass the laws, and then we would have to expand the court, or those 3 justices that I just talked about will have to be removed or step down, or however it is that they leave, and we would have to appoint new ones so that the laws that we just passed wouldn't be challenged. Okay, so that's how that would have to happen, and timing is tight for that, because I just don't think I don't think the timing really matches up. So if the timing doesn't match up, meaning the court hears the case before we can get our Democrats, seated in Congress and the Senate, the best news I can give you is that if the Supreme Court rules in favor of this, and all of a sudden our states are controlling the vote and against the will of the people, the will of the people, the people will step up. They will wake up. It's like Spirit is showing them being cold water splashed on their face. And I mean, tens and tens and tens of thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people will wake up and will protest. And there will be a correction. Okay. The Republicans will get the message. The state courts will get everybody will get the message. Oops, we went too far. We thought these people were asleep, and we thought that we could just do whatever we wanted, and they wouldn't care because they're too busy trying to make a living, too busy trying to pay their mortgage or their rent, too busy trying to take care of themselves. And, that's one of their things that they want, is that if Americans are too busy just trying to get by, they're not likely to be very active in their government. So, but when this happens, I see wholesale change that happens within overnight. So they will have gone too far, and this will be corrected. Okay, so yes, we should be concerned about it. No, we shouldn't be losing sleep over it, because first of all, there's nothing we can do about this. So worrying and losing sleep over it is just not going to help anything. And either way, if it doesn't happen, that's great. We've got time to address the situation. If it does happen, the will of the people will be shown, noticed, be very obvious, and they will back down, and there will be a correction. So I hope that makes sense, and I hope that answers your question, Subi. Pamela Bryant, thank you for your question. How are you? Will Scotus weaken the U.S. presidency into a powerless, empty office? She goes on to say there's supposed to be 3 co-equal branches, and Scotus seems to be taking over everything. Yes, it's so true. And we just talked about this in the previous 2 questions. So I think we covered it. I believe that Spirit is helping us. And I've talked about this in the past, right? Spirit doesn't get involved in the affairs of men or women or humans, unless as a nation or as a group of people, we're going to affect the entire world. And then the world's vibration is going to get off of kilter. And then that's going to cause some problems within our solar system and our galaxy. I feel like this is where we're about to happen. Honestly, humans have gone kind of off the chain here. We're ruining our environment. We're ruining the planet. Seems like very often we have nuclear threats. All of these things are changing the vibration. And then also the sort of vibration of hate and anger, uncertainty and fear. Those are all low vibrations. So those things are changing the vibration of our planet, which is emitting sort of a distress call. So that is why Spirit can get involved. Listen, I think somebody asked a question, but I think it might have to be on part 2 about, in the past when various countries have tried to use nuclear warheads, they failed. They've somehow or another have very suspiciously sort of failed or stopped. So listen, I think that Spirit is helping us out here. I think that the Supreme Court is going to be handled. 3 justices are going to step down. There's going to be a lot of ethical issues and some health issues, but we're going to get it all back together. We're going to have to expand the court anyway. The court has too much to do on its docket. There's a lot of shadow docket work that has to happen just because the court can't meet its demands of all the cases that are coming. So plus the SCOTUS has gone rogue. They're literally not following the Constitution. They say they're going back to the Constitution, but scholars are pointing out they're not even following the Constitution. So it's clear to pretty much everybody that SCOTUS has just gone rogue. And there's going to be a correction. And I think I talked about that in a previous question. Thank you for your question, Pamela. Susan Robinson says, will we ever find out who's responsible for all of these young MAGAs being in positions of authority? And she mentions Boebert, Green, Cawthorn, etc. She wants to know where did they come from and who is backing them. She says they all seem to appear out of nowhere. Now, I don't think I'm going to add all of this to this video, but I will say this. The internet sleuthers, the internet detectives have discovered that there's this modeling agency called Explore Talent. Now, Explore Talent is interesting because Boebert was on Explore Talent. Several Candace Owen was on Explore Talent. One of the women that was on Newsmax, became a Newsmax reporter, was found on Explore Talent. One or two of the people from January 6th came from Explore Talent. So the link here seems to be Explore Talent. Now, what you might think to yourself, well, how interesting, right? I mean, why would all these people from Explore Talent be so prominent in the Republican Party, or connections to the Republican Party? Well, one premise or one theory might be that the Republican Party decided to go to these sort of modeling agencies or casting agencies and decided to find suitable people that they may then groom to run for office, or groom to become protesters or anti-vaxxers, or even groom to become newscasters that would then kind of spill or propagate their own propaganda. Okay? So, now something that's interesting to me as well is that when Boebert was first decided that she was going to run, no other than Ted Cruz decided to give her a very sizable donation. Now, this woman is from nowhere land. I mean, nobody knows her. She's not worked for anybody's campaign. She's not in the Republican Party, per se, that you can find any links to her to that. But yet, Ted Cruz decided to give her a very big donation, and then conveniently forgot to report that donation. So to me, this is all connected. So you're asking, where do they come from? Well, in my opinion, and this is for entertainment purposes only, I believe that the Republican Party decided to groom some people to help them out. And that's where they came from. So, and Explore Talent is owned by a guy, not an American guy, and he made his money through actually phone sex porn decades ago. And so now he's opened up Explore Talent. I don't know what else he does. But this is pretty, if you just Google Lauren Boebert and Explore Talent, you'll find quite a bit. Candace Owen, Scott Pressler. I can't think of all the people, but there's at least 6 to 8 people that are connected in one way or another to either Trump or to the Republican Party. And the links that hold them together is Explore Talent. So thank you for your question. I appreciate it. Cheryl McNutt says, hi, Susan. Thank you. And thank you. She says, in 2022 and 2024, will Democrats win enough seats in the House and also in the Senate, plus the White House, to write and pass people positive legislation? Will we be able to make the world a better place in the extra 4 years of Biden's second term? So that's presupposing that Biden wins, which I do think that he's going to win. Either him or Kamala will be the president. One of them will be the president. And yes, in 22. So it will start with 22. Yes. So here's the thing about the midterms. We're either going to pick up 2 seats. We're either going to pick up 1 extra seat in the Senate and 2 in the Congress. And this is the minimum. Okay, this is the bare minimum that we're going to pick up. We could potentially pick up 4 seats or even 6 seats. And to be completely honest with you, we need to pick up those extra seats because we don't really have enough extra. 2 seats is not going to give us what we need. It's just not going to allow us to overcome the filibuster and to pass meaningful legislation. So we do need those extra people. The energy is up in the air about that. I'm just not sure. It's too far out for me to say that we're going to definitely have a blue wave Now, let me take that back. We are going to have a blue wave, okay? We are going to have a substantial increase in voting. But to be completely honest with you, with all of the things that are going to be hampering the voting, that we're going to need a tsunami blue wave to be able to pull this off. Extra voting is just not going to give us what it should. We're not going to get all the votes that we should get, just because people were pulled from the voter rolls or intimidated at the polls, or something happened to their vote, or the various reasons that the gerrymandering, all those reasons. But yes, I do think that regardless of what we get in, we're going to be able to do more in 2022 through 2024. Now, in 2024, that's a big if, because if we can get enough Democrats in to make a difference, and those Democrats can all play ball together, yes, 2024 is going to be amazing. We're going to be good. We're going to be really, really, really doing some good things for the country. Now, if we get in 22 and we don't have a big number of people, and the Democrats aren't so united, that's going to give Cheney a chance to get herself organized and to get the Republican Party organized. They're not going to get organized. They're not going to get organized until 23. But so that's still a threat for 24. Okay. They're going to get organized in 23, 22. Okay. 22, 23. They're going to get organized more like the latter half of 23. So, overall, yes. Yes. Overall, yes. So yes. Thank you for your question, Cheryl. Marie Olga says, she doesn't understand why someone from Homeland Security, the FBI, the ATF, the police, the CIA didn't pick up on the insurrection on Jan 6. She says, it seems like 4 different filmmakers were aware. And she says, heck, even I knew because my crazy relatives were discussing it right on Facebook the weeks before. Yes, well, I would say this, that some of the filmmakers didn't know it was happening. They were kind of in the middle of it. I think, but I do understand that some of the regular people knew. You're absolutely right that many of Trump's people were intimating, weren't they, saying, oh, it's going to be wild, or this, be careful, or look out. You know, they were all sort of hinting, right, that something was going to go down. And your question is, why didn't somebody in our security land know about it? Well, what I understand from the guides is that Trump was able to he was able to put his own picks in place, number one. So he was able to, in the bigger, more important positions, he was able to put his own picks in. Now, in some of these other kind of a little bit under the big positions, those people, they just didn't believe it. I mean, nobody really believed it. Nobody could imagine that this would happen. I mean, they're telling me they had been warned. They're showing me scholars, political scholars had warned various groups. But remember, Trump was still the president. I mean, there wasn't a lot that could be done without approval. So that is why nobody did anything. Everybody's hands were pretty much tied. So hopefully that makes sense to you, Maria. Thank you for your question. Chris Piazza says, in Susan's last video on Scotus, a number of times I touched on the power of the vote at the state level and how this will be a problem in 2024. This jumped out at me because of the upcoming Scotus ruling on the two cases, Moore versus Harper and Merrill versus Milligan. They'll hear them in October. They would give the final say to the elections to the state legislature. This would essentially create what Trump wanted. 60% of the state legislatures are red, and they would be able to choose who they want to win, overriding the will of the voters and expanding gerrymandering to favor Republicans. It would destroy our democracy. Dems would never win again in those states. Could you read on this? And Chris goes on to say that it's the most frightening thing that they've read about lately. We did talk about this earlier in the question by Sue B. I think they answered this. They're just telling me that, what is that word they're using? This is okay. So if they did this, if they gave the power to the state legislatures, and the legislatures weren't voting the will of the people, this would institute a sort of if you could imagine, the Constitution behind a glass and it says break in case of an emergency. This would constitute an emergency. And as they said before, the will of the people would stand up. There's enough, oddly enough, really, isn't it, that there's enough people. Pence is the one that saved our democracy. The guy is still kissing Trump's rear end, but he's the one that stood up and said, no, I'm going to follow through with this election. It was a real and valid election. Also, Cheney is also saying this is a bridge too far, even though she's very right-wing in her voting. She was pro bringing down Roe v. Wade. She's very right-wing in her voting, but this was a bridge too far for her. So I think you're going to see us come to the edge. You're going to see us come to the edge, and then we're going to be saved again. Very much like January 6th, we came to the edge. We got right up to the edge, and then we saved it, or Pence saved it. So this is what you're going to see again. We're going to go right up to that edge, and then something is going to keep us from going over that edge. And as they said earlier, if we do go over the edge, it's going to be changed. I mean, there will be a correction. This again, when you hear these astrologers talk about how the United States astrology chart very much mimics the same planets and whatnot in the same astrology chart during the Civil War and or during the Revolution. That's it, right? That's it right there. We have just split our country in half, and one side is saying we're going to do it like this, and the other side is saying we're going to do it like that. It's not going to stand. It's not going to stand, because then Biden will bring in the National Guard. I mean, he will. It's not, I don't see it really taking shape like that. Now, we may have, a fight on our hands. We may have a month of skirmishes or insurrection or something, but it's not going to stay that way. It's not tenable. And the American people themselves are not for it. So that's how you know it's really just not going to happen. But it is scary. I'm not going to lie. It's very, uneasy. Makes me very uneasy. But hopefully that gives you some perspective about it. And I don't know, it made me feel better to know that the worst case scenario is that they're going to do that and they'll try to separate us, but it's not going to happen. It's not going to work. I mean, I did just keep talking about it. The generals, everybody's going to be against this. It's not going to work. It's not even really truly what is said in the Constitution. So believe me, right now, Biden is meeting with legal scholars. He's meeting with constitutional scholars. He's getting together his generals. He's getting together. He's meeting with some of our a lot of judges. I mean, he's basically getting the lay of the land. He's coming up with plan A, plan B. So I do believe he's aware of this and he's actually dealing with it, which is good. And that squeaking is my puppy, which is better than barking, but it's still noise. So I apologize for that. She wants everybody to play with her. Deb B. Kane says, Susan and Guides, who poses the worst threat to our way of democracy? Trump, Putin, the far right, voting rights restrictions, climate dilemmas. Pick one or more. I won't be greedy. Who poses the worst threat to our way of democracy? Well, it's really the voting rights restrictions, and that is connected to the far right. It's connected to Putin, and it's connected to Trump. So all of those things kind of have a hand in that. But we just talked about why I think that the voting rights restrictions are not going to be a way of life for us. It's not going to be something that's going to stick in America. It's very antithetical to how Americans think about America. Even again, so they're showing me Trumpers and MAGAs are not the majority. Number one, they're not even really the majority of the Republican Party. Number two, and the Republican Party isn't the majority. So you're going to have way more people against this than for it. So I think you're going to see that it be squashed very, very quickly. As a matter of fact, what is that word? An insurrection. They're calling it an insurrection and they're calling it treason. I think Biden is going to turn into, he'll literally make this place martial law. I mean, do you understand? He is taking this quite seriously. He's not going to let this happen. He is done with these fools anyway. His patience is pretty much up to here. So he's going to handle it. Thank you for your question though. Really appreciate it. Cat's Cauldron, says, so much in the USA needs fixing. Where do we start? How does the ordinary voting citizen prioritize? Well, that's a great question, Cat's Cauldron. What Spirit says is, right. Okay. So, all right, there's a couple of things. They're showing me that, you know, all of us that are really kind of tuned in to the news, and we have the added benefit of listening to psychics talk about what's potentially going to happen. It would be really helpful if we can sort of keep our energy a little bit more regulated, because a few things. First of all, if we are riding the roller coaster of anxiety, which is something really bad is happening, something good is happening, something bad is happening, something good is happening, we're going to be exhausted. And we're not really going to be worth much anyway by the time the midterms get here. So that's one thing. Secondly, there's a whole nother group of people who aren't paying attention to news. Okay. I mean, and I'm not judging those people at all. I'm just saying they're not paying attention to politics or news, and potentially they don't even vote. When those people get this wake up call, when they get this cold water splashed on them and they wake up and they kind of see for the first time the reality of what's happening, they're going to be incredulous. They're going to be upset. And people like us that have watched this kind of fire start on the first floor and go all the way up, we could potentially be very impatient with them. Like, why haven't you been paying attention? What do you mean you're upset now? This has been going on. Where were you? So instead of saying things like that, Spirit wants us to be compassionate. Spirit wants us to reach our hands out and say, yes, I understand how upsetting this is. It's very upsetting to me too. You can help in these ways. So you can sign them up to vote. You can sign them up to help in a local campaign. You can sign them up to help in a statewide campaign. You can sign them up to help in a different state's campaign even. So that's one thing. Be aware that at some point these people are going to freak out. And it would be very understandable for us to say, wow, we've been in the trenches. Where have you been? And that's really going to be isolating them. It's going to be pushing them away, and we really need them, honestly. So let's also just try to be compassionate. Secondly, they're talking a lot about our local races. Now, I know some of these, like where I live, it's really red, and, it's a small town. And of course, I'm at the grocery store with the guy that's running for the school board, and I know that he's a Trumper. It's hard. I'm not going to lie to you guys. It's really, really hard. I would just say to you that if you have a candidate, or perhaps if you want to run, more power to you. But in any case, Spirit would like for you to really consider getting a group together now and being very active in your local races. So that could also mean become a voting registrar, where you can go out and register people to vote, become a poll watcher, agree to work the elections, also agree to help these local candidates. So if you have a local candidate that's running as a Democrat and you're in a red area, chances are they're going to get a lot of flack, and they could really get a lot of intimidation. They could get threats. And I just think that if someone's really going to put themselves out there to run, the rest of us should try to help them in any way possible. And that might mean fundraising for them, but it also might be accompanying them, having a group of people that just accompanies them places so that they feel safer, so that there's always 2, 3, 4, 5 people with them when they're going out to do things, so that they just feel safer. Also, something Spirit's mentioned in the past is that we should really think about using our phones and really video almost everything. Even if nothing's happening, just run your video. And then if nothing does happen, delete it. But if something does happen, you've got it on camera. Okay, so that could be very handy. If somebody walks up and yells or screams or, God forbids, does anything violent, you're already videoing. So you don't have to worry about, finding your camera, turning it on. Be very proactive. So these are some things that you can do. But primarily what they would like for you to do is take good care of yourself, because a lot of this stuff is happening on a national level, and there's just nothing we can do about that. But if you take care of yourself and you can keep your vibration a little bit higher, you will be emitting light that those people that are being affected in some way can use. So when our and you can raise your vibration very quickly by just listening to a happy song or doing a gratitude list for 10 minutes. There's really easy ways to raise your vibration. So you can pump up your vibration, and then send prayers. So when your vibration is high, and then you send prayers out to, let's say, Ukraine, or let's say to somebody running for office. When you send those prayers out, the prayers are going to have much more energy attached to them. They're going to go further. They're going to have more oomph to them because your vibration is higher. So hopefully that makes sense. And also, to have a higher vibration is going to make you healthier, right? It's also going to just keep your body in a healthier state. Now, I understand that we can't stay in a high vibration all the time. So, our vibration is kind of go up and down just naturally. That's fine. But when you can, think about boosting it so that it can do extra good. Thank you for your question, Cat's Cauldron. Mickey Walk, thank you for your question, says, 3 leaders that I know of have been taken down in the past few days. UK PM, Prime Minister Boris Johnson, resigned. Politically active and former Japanese PM was killed outside of a station while campaigning. And now the Sri Lankan president, Gotabaya Rajapaksa, fled the presidential palace and the PM there resigned. What is going on? Are more country leaders going to be ousted this summer? Yeah, I mean, what's going on? Right. So what they're telling me is that, and I know we all thought this, right? I mean, when Boris Johnson stepped down, a lot of us thought, well, wow, Britain did the right thing. They voted no confidence. Now, in America, we didn't impeach our president. We decided to let him, do his thing. So we were all pretty happy about that, about Boris Johnson stepping down. And it's sort of what I think is happening. What they're showing me is that America has been quite the lesson for the rest of the world, right? America is the mighty, America is the democracy, America is the free power, the world's biggest, best free power. And we are really under attack. Our democracy is really under attack. And I think that certain countries like the UK are really watching. Well, I got to be honest with you. I'm seeing Canada being horrified, Australia being horrified, the UK, Britain being horrified. A lot of countries are literally horrified that we are falling. Our democracy is really under attack and that we seem to be faltering. Okay. So that is why, and Boris Johnson was basically a Trumper, and he tried to re-engineer his identity through the whole Ukraine thing. But Brexit has been a nightmare. So that's what happened there. The former Japanese PM that was killed is very interesting because the guy that killed him, first of all, his mother lost a great deal of money. She was swindled by this religious cult, if you will. And the guy thought at first he was going to attack the religious cult leader, or those people. And then he decided that at some point he thought that this Japanese PM had spoken fondly or endorsed this cult. So that's why he switched. But this guy was a lone wolf, and that energy is very similar to what we have in the United States. These people are being radicalized. This guy was radicalized in Japan, which is unheard of. They don't even really have guns. The guy had to make his own gun. So the energy is similar in this case. Now, as far as like the Sri Lankan president, it's this energy of change. And I've talked about this before, but they're bringing it up again. I see this in Australia. I see people in the streets in Australia wanting better working conditions. They want better pay. They want the environment. I mean, they just want to be heard. They want their voices to be heard. They don't feel like their voices are heard. Also, I feel like this energy is going to be hitting Brazil, in South America, several countries. So this change energy, which is also hitting the United States as well, is just kind of rampant. Russia is going to be going through this as well. Right now, the Russian people are sort of coalescing around behind the war, but they haven't really felt the teeth of the sanctions yet. So that's going to change. I give Russia another 2 years, 3 at the max, and they will have their own Arab Spring, or they'll have their own political action, reform going on as well. So it's just this energy of people are waking up and people want their voices heard. So that's kind of what you're seeing kind of spark across the world. He has who answered this? Mickey Walk. Mickey Walk also says, will there be copycat assassinations in Japan? And I don't think so. First of all, this has freaked the Japanese government out tremendously, and they will take very big precautions. They will have much more buffer zones around their people. Their, elected people will have bigger buffer zones, more crowd control. I don't see it, but it really is a wake-up call that this radicalization through the internet can happen to any country. So, and there are, they just showed me countries that would normally have to do diplomacy, and they would have to sit down with another country and say, we want your grain, or we want this, or let's trade, or let's work this out. But this new energy that Russia seems to have really made, they've practiced it. They've gotten it very, very, I can't think of a word. But anyway, now these other countries are doing it too. And the whole point is to destabilize. So if you can destabilize Japan, then they're weaker, and then their bargaining power is weaker. If you can destabilize the United States, we're weaker. So this is becoming the new power play. This sort of radicalization of people through the internet. And they're talking about how they're focusing on free countries, using our own freedom to wreck us. So you can guess what countries would be using our own freedom to make our lives chaotic. You know what I mean? It makes perfect sense. Thank you for your question, Mickey Walk. Okay. Eastern secrecy. And Eastern secrecy says, can presidents who have crossed over influence what is happening to the country right now? If so, in what way? That is a brilliant question. Can presidents who have crossed over influence what is happening to the country right now? Yes, they can. What can happen is, and of course, nobody's going to talk about this. I mean, nobody's going to talk about this, but, I'm seeing Kennedy, I'm seeing Teddy Roosevelt, and I'm seeing, somebody else that I can see his face, but I can't think of his name. They can, okay, so what spirit does to influence us is they give us thoughts. They give us ideas. We think they're our own ideas. Okay. So they could influence Biden or our lawmakers in that way. They could sort of give them an idea, like if they think that they have a good way to solve a problem, they could put that kind of idea in Biden's head. They could also come to him in a dream, like as in a premonition. Also, they could nudge them to read a history book, like to read their own, they may be drawn to pick up a history book on one of these presidents and to read about some particular history. Also, remember how earlier they were talking about how Biden is conferring with political scientists and political scholars. Some of these people are encouraging Biden to meet with them. They're sort of making the introduction. So yes, they can influence them. Who is the guy that was the general who was our president? I want to say Gerald Ford, and it's not Gerald Ford. It's industrial complex, the guy that was the general, Eisenhower. I think it's Eisenhower. He's also really involved. Kennedy, Teddy Roosevelt. Yeah. So, you also had to be careful, right? Because Ronald Reagan, who, if I just may say myself, in my opinion, is the devil incarnate, he could also try to manipulate or to put thoughts in people's heads. I don't think Biden is, I would like to say I don't think Biden is conducive to having those thoughts become influence, but I can't tell you that because Biden is such a middle of the road, such a consensus guy. So yes, the question is, yes, they do, and yes, they can, and that's how they do it. So thank you for that question. It was really fascinating. Okay, MHB says, do my guides see the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact, the MPVIC, getting passed by enough states to reform the Electoral College in the next 5 years? I don't even know what that is, National Popular Vote Interstate Compact. National Popular Vote Interstate Compact. I don't see it. Because there's some problem with it? I don't know. It seems to be divisive. It seems to be dividing people, like people can't get together to get behind it. However, I will tell you that the Electoral College is going to be either changed or adapted or replaced because it's not working. Okay, it's not. The Electoral College that's true. They're showing me how. So the Electoral College allows some states to have more representation than other states, right? And that's exactly what they're doing with this voting bill that they have going before the Supreme Court. Same energy, really. Some states get more votes than others. Some states have more control than others. Similar energy. Anyway, so yes, it is going to get changed though. It's just maybe not through that way, but yes, we are going to because this is the problem, you guys. Again, once these people wake up and realize that their wishes are not being heard, just like I said about Australia and Brazil and all these other countries, they're going to be in the streets and they're going to make these changes happen. The will of the people, this is kind of like the energy that's going around the world, is the will of the people. The will of the people. This is the next 5, 8, 10, the next 8 years is the will of the people. Okay. The second question that MHB has is, how do my guides see us amending the U.S. Constitution, as they talked about in the last Q&A, when it requires 2/3 vote in Congress and 3/4 of the states to ratify? Yeah. Well, okay. So this is more of a, right. Okay. All right. So this is going to be a little bit further out, but they just showed me. Now, I realize this isn't what we wanted, but they just showed me how 1 week Congress and the Senate is like, no on gun changes. And the next week they're like, yeah, we're voting on gun changes. Okay, so change can happen very quickly. You'd be surprised. If you've got millions of people out on the streets causing shutdowns and you also have broad acceptance, meaning the people in the streets aren't all 20-year-olds, or one race or one religion or one age, but instead you've got broad consensus. Believe you me, those Republicans are going to sit up and take notice very quickly. Again, the will of the people is what they're telling me. So I do think that we could see some very quick changes in the next couple of years, especially because if they do this and we allow the Supreme Court, we don't allow, but if the Supreme Court pulls these shenanigans on us, you're going to see wholesale changes happen within a year to 16 months. I mean, those kinds of changes where 3/4 of the states vote in the same way. You will see that, because that is too far. And that's why in some ways, it's not the most terrible thing that they're pushing this all too far, because if they didn't push it too far, they might get away with it. But they're going to push it too far, and then we're going to have to correct it. So that's kind of what I see. Hopefully that makes sense. Darren says, now that Boris Johnson has resigned, and as you mentioned, we, the UK, could get a non-British PM, although Boris was born in New York, which I didn't know, what will the next 10 years look like politically? God bless you all. Boris was born in New York and Trump was born in New York? Oh, Lord, New York. God bless you all. Okay, so anyway, the question is, what will the UK look like in the next 10 years politically? Well, I see the UK going through very much what the US is going through, although I do see the UK struggling with some race issues, and also some pretty heavy duty, what do you call that? Immigration. Right. Heavy duty immigration issues. The PM that I thought could possibly, who they showed me was possibly coming in before Boris Johnson stepped down, was the lady that's in office now, who I think I saw was Priti Patel, if that's how you say her name. That's who Priti Patel, that's who I thought I saw. Now that it's done and the energy is in the flux and you can feel all of the competition, there seems to be that she would have a hard time beating this guy, and the guy might be he might also be Indian. But I really see a woman, and I don't see her being blonde. I see her being dark-headed. But we'll see. That's what I get for you guys. The energy is pretty topsy-turvy right now. But overall, for you guys, I think you're going to pull it together. I mean, there's some big changes with the royalty coming up in the next 10 years. I mean, Prince Andrew, not Andrew. I'm connected to Spirit, and they don't always give me the names that I need to get. But anyway, I see Prince Charles' son taking over, and I really see him modernizing the royal family, and I mean really modernizing it. I mean, getting rid of some of the historical, more mundane. They may even actually auction off some of the land. I mean, really some big changes, to be honest with you. I think he wants to break apart the landowners, that kind of duke or duchess or whatever all that stuff is. It feels like he wants to make it more modern. These are big changes. I'm talking about big changes. But overall, I feel like Britain is going to, again, it's very similar to the United States, where you're breaking it all down. You're breaking down things. Things are being broken down, whether you want them to or not. Now you get this opportunity to build it. It's like Brexit. Maybe you'll, get back in that, or maybe you'll create a new way of replacing that or adapting that. But, overall, the next 10 years, I mean, with all these big changes, overall, it looks stable, except for just I mean, the thing that kind of feels unsettling to me is like this sort of protesting or sort of some kind of issues around immigration and race. And the reason that also was because if your prime minister is Indian, there could be, that again, it's sort of like how we got Barack Obama. We thought, great, look at this. This is amazing. And then what it did was it brought every racist out of every little dark cubbyhole corner, in our country. And so similar for you guys. If you guys go with, which it feels like there's strong possibility that you go with an Indian or some other type of person who's not, white and British, that could cause some internal identity problems. Okay. Hopefully that makes sense. You guys will come through them, but it gives you a chance to talk as a country. What do we want? What do we don't want? You know what I mean? And this is very important for all of us. This is what America's going through. What do we want? What do we don't want? So hopefully that makes sense. I'm going to answer one more question. I think I'm trying to find a short question because these are kind of long and I want to wrap this up. Okay, this is a short question and then we'll wrap it up and there will be a part 2 and part 2 has some really good questions. So I hope you'll watch it. This is from Joyce Gibson and she says, admittedly, it's a bizarre question and it is a bizarre question, that she wants me to put to rest or the guides to put to rest. And the question rumor is, there's a rumor floating around that anyone who was vaccinated for COVID-19 will pass away in 6 months. She says, I think it's crazy, but I know a few folks that have serious concerns. Joyce, it's not true. Okay. It's not true. It's not true. I don't know what else to tell you other than it's not true. These people have been saying things for a year now. How many times was all these dead people were supposed to come back to life? Remember those things? Trump was already supposed to be back in office at least 3 or 4 different times. Listen, I'm sorry, but these people that are on the internet that are radicalizing certain segments that are very vulnerable of our community and other communities. And that's what's happening here. So no, there's no chance of that. Nobody's going to die in 6 months from COVID-19 vaccination. It's not true. So having said that, I'm going to end this video. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. I really appreciate it. You guys know that are the end watchers. You know that you get gold stars. So thank you so much. You get your gold stars. I'm happy to give them to you in the comments as well. Listen, check out part 2 because there's some really good, juicy questions about James Comey, about the IRS investigating Andrew McCabe and James Comey. Elon Musk, is he really going to sell Twitter? He says he's not going to, but he's going to be hit with $1 billion fine. What's going to happen with that? A question about 9/11, questions about Texas, questions about the Dems and Nancy Pelosi, questions. Good, interesting questions. So listen, if you guys have any other questions, is ET going to stop us from nuclear disasters? Louis DeJoy, lots and lots of other questions here, actually. QAnon is back, if you can believe it, disappeared and is now back. Questions about Marjorie Taylor Greene and Marcus Flowers, who's running against her. So many questions. So listen, thank you guys so much for watching. Please do me a favor and subscribe. The channel is growing and I really appreciate that. And I want you along with us. So please think about doing that. If you would give the video a like, I'd appreciate that too. Take really good care of yourself. And I'll be back with part 2 probably in about 2 or 3 days. I'm in the middle of teaching a class and there's a lot going on. So it'll probably be a few days before I get to part 2, but it's coming. You guys take good care. for entertainment purposes only.